Oh, good evening, friends. So this is the 50th update. So I'll be talking on this interesting topic, colchicine in COVID-19. So the date is 19th May 2021. So as you would be aware, colchicine, many people have considered. So there has been a raging debate on use of this colchicine and incorporating this into our state protocol. So we've had multiple discussions. So we couldn't attain a sort of a good consensus whether this really holds promise in COVID and in preventing deaths. So in the face of the second wave, where so many deaths have happened, we are really grappling to see which magical drug would work in reducing the deaths. Unfortunately, none have found to be significantly effective in reducing the progression. So this is another time-tested drug which has been tried out. So I'll just give a brief narrative about the science behind using this molecule and some of the studies and some of the future studies that are awaited on this particular molecule. So on that note, on that beautiful note, so we'll talk about this colchicine. So basically, this whole drug is derived from a plant called Colchicum autumnale. So it's a very, very old drug. So it is almost close to 2000 years since this drug has been in practice. So initially, the whole usage of this drug was more as a poison. So later on, its usage was found to be effective in treating gout, which typically in which it is commonly used. So in 1955, they sort of described or elucidated the structural component of colchicine. And basically, it is a ringed molecule. So it has a trimethoxyphenyl ring and a tropolonic ring and a methyl sort of a compound and a disulfide compound as well. So it is a ring structure which was described in 1955. And the basic approval for usage of colchicine drug and the FDA approval is mainly for two conditions. One is gout, and the second one is familial Mediterranean fever. So off-label usage, I'm sure all the listeners would be aware, so it has been used in multiple chronic disorders, predominantly arthritis. So the off-label usage of colchicine has been used in calcium pyrophosphate arthritis, sarcoid arthritis, and psoriatic arthritis. So any chronic disorders involving the bony joints, colchicine definitely seems to have a promising role. And this has been used by many rheumatologists and many physicians for a very long time for any joint pains or any arthritic issues. So this is the interesting aspect of colchicine. So for every listener, it is very important to understand basically how this whole colchicine acts in mitigating and reducing the inflammatory process. So it is very important for us to understand how this acts. So I think one word, if at all at the end of my talk, I would want listeners to listen is basically you will remember the word tubulin colchicine complex. So the whole mechanism of action of colchicine is on this tubulin. So basically every cell has a lot of these tubulin structures. So the colchicine binds to the tubulin and it forms a complex called tubulin colchicine complex. And so it has a diabolical sort of an action. At a lower dose, it has one action, and at a higher dose, it has another action. So at the lower dose, it basically interferes with the formation of this tubulin and then expansion of this tubulin. At a higher dose, it causes depolymerization of this tubulin and causes distortion of its structure. So this is the primary basic mechanism of how colchicine acts. And now it is important to understand what are these whole microtubules about. So basically our cell structure has a lot of these tubulins or microtubules, which are quintessential for facilitating the mitotic division of the cells. So which means when these tubulins have a role to play in lot of division of these inflammatory cells as well. And it also helps in maintaining the shape of the cells. And most importantly, see, this is one thing which we need to understand. These tubulins remain an important conduit in facilitating the signaling mechanism from the cells. So for any inflammatory process to happen in the body, there is a lot of signals passed on from cell to cell, which leads to this whole inflammatory cascade. So these tubulins are very much essential for the signaling process to happen. And these tubulins have an important role in the transduction and migration of these cells to the various sites causing damage to the tissues and the organs, so on and so forth. Basically, when you're looking at a hyperinflammatory process. So the tubulins get activated. They facilitate a lot of mitotic division of the cells. They cause a lot of extensive signaling leading to the release of these inflammatory mediators, migration of the cells, transduction of the cells. So the whole colchicine is proposed to inhibit this whole process or the whole conundrum of mitotic division and signaling and transmigration and transduction of these cells by forming this tubulin colchicine complex. So that is the basic mechanism of colchicine. And another important role is colchicine has a specific binding ability to the membrane of these neutrophils, and it causes some cytoskeletal reorganization of these cells, and it inhibits chemotaxis. So this is also an important way in which colchicine helps in mitigating the inflammatory process. So all in all, so by reducing the mitotic division of the inflammatory cells, by reducing the signaling mechanism, transduction, transmigration, and chemotaxis, it basically minimizes or mitigates the production of a lot of inflammatory mediators like tumor necrosis factor alpha and a lot of interleukins. And another important role of colchicine is it has an ability to inhibit inflammasome, which is also marked as one of the important markers of triggering the whole inflammatory cascade. So it has an effect on inhibiting the inflammasome. So now we have spoken as to at the cellular level how colchicine helps in mitigating the inflammatory process. Does it have any direct effect on the virus? So it has been found this tubulin complex, the tubulins which are present in the body, the tubulin heterodimers which is called, binds to the cytoskeletal tail of this spike protein. So this is the spike protein. So basically these tubulins are known to bind to this tail aspect of the cytoskeletal tail aspect of the spike protein, and it inhibits the viral replication. So tubulins are sort of involved in inhibiting the viral replication. And these viruses basically gains entry into the cells through these tubulin structures or the tubulin heterodimers. So basically tubulins are sort of needed in gaining entry into the cell. So colchicine sort of inhibits the polymerization. So, and it maintains, it sort of distorts the tubulin structure so that the viral entry into the cell doesn't happen. So there is a blockage of this viral entry by distorting the tubulin structure by the colchicine. And as I said, colchicine, so this is the structure of inflammasome. So colchicine has an inhibitory effect on the inflammasome. So all in all, so it does have an effect at the cellular level to mitigate the inflammatory process. At the viral level, it does have some ability in vitro studies where they found it blocks the entry of the virus into the cells by causing distortion of these tubulins, which are present in the cells, which are needed for the virus to gain entry into the cells. And it has an effect on inhibiting the inflammasome, which are very much sort of agents which trigger the inflammatory process. So now we have looked into the mechanism of action. So the listeners should possibly just remember this tubulin colchicine complex, which is the sort of the core aspect or the sentinel aspect of how colchicine acts. So when it comes to pharmacokinetics, the onset of action is 24 hours. So the half-life of colchicine is 9 hours, but when there is an acute kidney injury or a renal failure, the half-life increases by 2 to 3 times and it can go up to 24 hours. So colchicine is readily absorbed mainly from jejunum and ileum, and it is absorbed within 2 hours after ingestion. And the metabolism of colchicine happens in the liver by cytochrome P450, 540, and protein glycoprotein complex. And another important aspect of colchicine is colchicine seems to have some sort of an affinity to the inflammatory sites, and the levels of colchicine has been found to be high at the sites of inflammation where inflammatory cells are present. So because it is metabolized in the liver, so in chronic liver conditions, the half-life of colchicine increases up to 10 times. So the half-life can extend up to 4 days. So please remember the colchicine accumulation tends to happen in acute kidney injury and in the liver failure. And excretion, the excretion happens from three sides. Predominant excretion happens from the bowel at 10 to 56% of colchicine gets excreted in the bowel. The remaining 10 to 25% gets excreted from the biliary secretions, and 10 to 20% get excreted from the kidney. So this is the pharmacokinetic aspect of colchicine. So now we'll jump into the study. So we have seen how the colchicine acts and the pharmacokinetics of it. and it's some antiviral effects that it possesses. So now we'll talk about this particular trial that came called Corona. So this was the most recent trial that came in Jan 2021. So this was a study conducted combined by the Brazilian group, predominantly Canadian group, Brazil and US group. So it was a randomized double-blinded study. So it was quite a big study. It was a positive study. So the dose they used in this cold corona study was zero point 0.5 milligram twice a day for 3 days, then followed by once a day for 30 days. So this was the dosage they used. So the primary endpoint was composite of death and patients needing hospitalization. So the exclusion criteria was, as I said, because colchicine is excreted from the bowel predominantly, and the predominant side effects of colchicine, which audience need to remember, is the GI effect. So the exclusion criteria had to be inflammatory bowel disease or malabsorption, diarrhea, neuromuscular disorder. The inclusion criteria was any patient more than 40 years and within diagnosis, after diagnosis within 24 hours, patients had to be enrolled. And some of the exclusion criteria was chronic liver disease, because as you saw in liver, the half-life significantly increases up to 4 days, or where GFR was less than 30 ml per minute because the drug tends to accumulate. So these were some of the exclusion criteria of this trial. So when you look at the results, so it is quite an impressive big study. So I have looked into the preprint. It is not come officially in any sort of an index publication. So I've gone through the preprint, the manuscript. So 4,159 patients. So the primary endpoint, which is the hospitalization and death, composite of hospitalization and death, was 4.6% in colchicine and 6%. So it was less. Primary endpoint was less in colchicine, and that was statistically significant. And the patients needing hospitalization, the odds ratio was 0.75. As you see, this is also statistically significant. So the primary endpoint, which is a composite of death and hospitalization, was significant, and the need for hospitalization was less in patients who got colchicine. And what about patients needing mechanical ventilation and death? So here they found odds ratio was 0.5 and 0.56, and it was not statistically significant. As you see, confidence interval is 0.23 to 1.07 and 0.19 to 1.66, which is not statistically significant. And when they looked at overall serious adverse events, there was no difference between colchicine and placebo, although colchicine appeared to trend towards lesser side effects. But when they looked at GI side effects, which is diarrhea, which was more in colchicine, they looked at pneumonia. Pneumonia was less in colchicine, more in placebo, but diarrhea was more in colchicine and less in placebo. So this is, in summary, the result findings of this big study. So it was a positive study where the composite endpoint seemed to favor colchicine in this. But would we change practice based on this trial? So I would not have an answer at this point of time. Let's look into the other study that came, and then we'll make some conclusions. So this was a little older study. We had reviewed this study in the first wave. So this came from Greece, actually. So this study came in JAMA on 24th June 2020. So we had gone through this study, but we were not hugely impressed. It's quite a good study, robust study, again a positive study. Title of which is Effect of Colchicine versus Standard Care on Cardiac and Inflammatory Biomarkers and Clinical Outcomes in Patients Hospitalized with Coronavirus. So this was a prospective, open-label, randomized controlled trial, and it included a small number. So compared to the previous study where 4,000 odd, here it only had 105 patients, but spread across 16 hospitals. So they did over a short period of time, 3rd April to 27th April 2020. Primary endpoint has they primarily looked into the cardiac biomarkers. They looked at the maximum high sensitive cardiac troponin levels as the primary endpoint. And they looked at the time taken for increase in the CRP to more than 3 times reference value. So friends, we all understand rise in CRP is an important marker of clinical deterioration in patients with COVID, at least in the initial 6 days. So that is when it indicates that possibly cytokine storm is setting in, and possibly the role of steroids has to be contemplated. And the primary endpoint, they also looked at the time for patients to deteriorate with 2 points on an ordinal scale of 7. So friends, as you know, all the COVID studies that has happened so far, they've looked at a clinical ordinal scale and have looked at progression after initiating any sort of a treatment. So here they looked at the deterioration of 2 points as one of the primary endpoints. So secondary endpoint, they looked at percentage of patients who are on mechanical ventilator, who needed mechanical ventilator, all-cause mortality, and they looked at side effects. In side effects, they looked at number, type of side effects, and how many were severe. So this was some of the outline of the study methodology they adopted. So the dosage they used is 1.5 milligram as a loading dose, and for after 1 hour they gave zero point 0.5 mg, and this was followed by zero point 0.5 mg twice a day. So this is the sort of a drug dosing they used in this study. So what did they find in this results? As I said, it's a small study, 105 patients. They looked at median high sensitivity cardiac troponin, and this was found to be significantly, not significantly, it was statistically not significant. It was lower in colchicine as compared to the placebo, that was not statistically significant. They looked at median rise in CRP. Again, there was no statistical difference between these two. But when they looked at the composite of the primary endpoint, clinical primary endpoint rate, the whole, when they took the composite, it was found to be less in colchicine, 1.8% as opposed to the 14% in placebo, and that attained statistical significance. So they also looked at the median survival time. So median survival time was more in colchicine as compared to the placebo, 20.7 days versus 18.6 days. Adverse events, there was no difference between colchicine and placebo. And again, in this study, diarrhea was found to be much higher in colchicine. So all the studies clearly point out, but when you're using colchicine, the diarrhea and the GI side effects are something that are common with usage of colchicine. So all in all, as you see, when they looked at singularly, when they looked at the cardiac biomarkers, there was no difference. But when they took the composite of the primary endpoints, which is these biomarkers along with the clinical deterioration of 2 points, so there they did find statistical significance of 1.8% versus 14%. So this is the Kaplan-Meier curve of cumulative survival from primary endpoint. As you see, it is much higher in colchicine as compared to the control group. So these are two studies, the Greco trial and the Cole Corona trial, which sort of sends a signal, especially the Cole Corona, which is still not published, 4,000 patients, which sort of sends a signal towards possibly there is going to be some benefit in patients having lesser death rates and lesser need for hospitalization. But whether this would translate into our change in clinical practice, let us see what the recent study which has come out, the recovery, has shown. So because these two studies possibly have shown strong signals, there are series of studies which are lined up, and it would be interesting to see the results of these studies. So there are almost 8 studies registered, randomized controlled trials, and this is one study called Cole Heart study, which is a US-based study, 150 patients. Here the dosage they are using is 0.6 mg BD for 30 days. And as you see, the results will be out in 2021. I mean, that is the completion date. So the results will be coming after that. So this is another study by Latin America, by Argentina. So this looks like quite a robust, very big study, 1,279 patients. So study to be completed in April 26, 2021. So we would be, so these two would have been completed by now. So we should be seeing them coming out with the reports or the data at any point of time. So the Argentinian study used 1.5 milligram as a bolus, and after 2 hours they got 0.5 mg, and then followed by 0.5 mg twice a day for 14 days. So these are all the drug dosage that they've used in the study. So this is an Italian study, small one. Again, here the dosage they used is 1.5 mg as a loading dose, followed by 0.5 mg BD. So this study is due to be completed on November 2021. Sorry. So this is another study called Cole COVID study from the Spanish group, 102 patients. So if you see the date, this study should have been completed, but I searched for the publication, so I couldn't find the results of this study. So the dosage they used is 1.5 milligram loading dose, followed by 0.5 milligram twice a day into 7 days, and followed by 0.5 milligrams once a day into 28 days. So they have used various regimes. So but the point to remember is the dosage is around 0.5 mg twice a day or once a day for a long period of time, because colchicine seems to have a sort of a slow and prolonged sort of an effect in mitigating the whole inflammatory process. So this is another Italian study called Cole COVID study. So this also, if you look, it is 310 patients. It was meant to be completed in December 2020. So again, I looked for the results of this study, colchicine counteracting inflammation in COVID-19. I couldn't find any manuscript that has come out with the results of this study. So would be keen if any one of you find the results of this study to just share it so that we could discuss this study. So the dosage they used was 1 milligram per day. So this was another study done by US called Combat COVID, colchicine in moderate to severe hospitalized patients before ARDS. So 70 patients. Again, it was meant to be completed in June 2020. So I couldn't find the manuscript. Here, the dosage they used was 1.2 milligram. And after 2 hours, they gave 0.6 milligram, followed by 0.6 milligram twice a day for 14 days. So now coming to our final conclusion. So we saw two trials. One is Cole Corona, big study, 4,000, showing strong signals. Okay, there may be some benefit in reducing death and hospitalization. And this was preceded by the Greco trial. Again, there it showed the composite of the primary endpoint, which is the clinical deterioration. They found better in colchicine as opposed to the control group, although the cardiac biomarkers individually did not show any difference. So what about the recovery? So this came very recently. I think this it's published on their website on 7th March 2021. So the publication should be out at some point of time. So the recovery trial closes recruitment to colchicine treatment. So what did they find? So this is the biggest study. We should possibly give us a straight answer whether colchicine holds promise. So you can't possibly find a bigger study than this. So 11,162 patients who are randomized for usage of colchicine and usual care. They had 2,178 deaths in total, and 94% of these 11,162 patients received dexamethasone. They looked at 28-day mortality. So it was 20% in colchicine as opposed to 19% in usual care. Relative risk was 1.02, confidence interval not significant, and as you see, there's no statistical. So this is a nail on the coffin, which really puts an end to the debate on colchicine, that although there is a scientific plausibility that at a cellular level, it does seem to have a good effect in reducing inflammation, and at a viral level, it may have antiviral effect. So Cole Corona showing some positive signals, but recovery with 11,162 patients, 28-day mortality showing no difference, really puts an end to the hope that colchicine would really make any difference in preventing the progression of COVID disease. So we had a raging debate in our state expert committee that colchicine has to be incorporated and to be used at a community level, where we have voiced time and again that it may not hold a great promise because of the evidence which doesn't appear very strong. But I think recovery trial has put an end to a lot of these experimental drugs or drugs that were used on a compassionate grounds, and has dwindled our hope in any of these drugs. So all in all, friends, I think recovery is the sort of a final verdict on colchicine, that it may not really hold promise as we would have hoped and loved to see. So thank you all. So I would end my talk with this very beautiful quote: "The best fighter is never angry." So it's such a good sort of a quote with a lot of meaning. So thank you all. So you can visit my website www.drpradeeprangappa.com to rehear to this lecture, or log into the YouTube channel to rehear to this lecture. Thank you all.